In this video, I'm going to show you probably the coolest AI tool that you'll find out there right now, and it's called Google's Notebook LM. Now, this is a tool that is so powerful you can throw anything at it. You can throw in your slides, your books, your keynote speeches, your podcasts, your videos, your summaries, doesn't matter, and it will digest it for you. But what you can do with it is even more impressive. Now, basically, it works in a very simple 3-step process. You throw in the resources, the sources that you want to use, then it digests the information for you, and then you can choose the output that you generate. Now, the output in itself can be a lot of things. You could, for example, create an entire mind map of the content. You can create flashcards. You can create an infographic, an entire slide deck, a quiz, a video summary, an audio podcast, or even reports and keynote speeches. Now, I'm really not kidding when I say this is probably one of the most powerful things that I've found, because what you can do is until such a level that it will blow your mind. So in this video, I'm going to do it in a very structured way because it's a lot coming at you. We're going to look at where we can find the model. We're going to look at how we can add the sources, and then one by one, we're going to sort of look at the outputs, but also how you can use that model to refine it and go into the detail, into the sources to find that information again. So sit back and relax and make yourself comfortable, because this is probably going to be the biggest change in the way you learn and process materials. So let's start with the first part, which is getting our sources into place. All right, so first thing we do is we go to notebooklm.google to access this. Now we're going to click on this Try Notebook LM. If you want to learn more about it, you can see there's a lot more information here. We're not going to do that right now in this video. I'm just going to experiment and show you sort of what it does. Now here we can see we can create new notebooks. So there's multiple notebooks available, some trial versions with all different sources to summarize it. I'm going to click on New Notebook to sort of open a new notebook for us where we can start to summarize. Here we can see we can add our sources. So we can either drag in our sources or just documents that we want, MP3 files, doesn't matter, JPEGs, PNGs, we can all drag it in here. And we can also add some links to it. I'm going to work with website links and YouTube links here at the bottom. So let's say for this example, we want to summarize the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Now there's a few things we can do. We can get a PDF, we can get it in the podcast, we can get maybe a summary from YouTube, we can get an explanation by the author itself, and we're going to throw all of these resources in. Now the first thing I've done is I've went to Atomic Habits PDF to sort of see what is available online. We can see in this Internet Archive here, if I click it, we see the entire book is available. So I'm going to copy that URL and then jump back into Notebook LLM and sort of add it as a link here. So I'm going to do a website link, paste URLs, add this one in here, press enter, and then I'm going on YouTube, and here I'm going to take a few of the videos, one from the author itself and maybe one summary, and I'm also going to copy these URLs. Now I'm going to keep it simple. I'm not going to add many more documents. I'm just going to use these, the book, and then the summary that I found online, as well as the summary from the author itself. Just a few important notes here to add multiple URLs, separate them with a space or a new line. So that's why I entered to add a new line. And then only the visible text on the website will be important. That makes sense. And then paid articles are not supported. So you have to find some free articles that you can use. And then click on Insert to sort of let the model digest the information. So here on the left side, we can see if the sources have been added correctly and if it sort of can go through the information that is available there. And once everything has been checked, like you see here now, it can access that information. It's already giving us like a very short introduction of what it is. But the important thing is what we can find here on the right. We can have an audio overview, generate an AI podcast based on your sources, which is incredible. We have a video interview, a explainer video about this sort of topic. Mind map, that is the one I'm really curious about. Reports, flashcards, so you can have like a test with all of the content that you can use here, quiz, infographic, and slide deck. So it's pretty impressive what you can do. So now that we've added these sources and we've let the model digest it a little bit, let's have a look at the outputs. And the first one we're going to look at is the mind map. Now, mind maps can be really helpful when you want to digest information, condense it, or sort of get an overall view of what the topic consists of. Let's start with a mind map. So it's now generating a mind map based on those 3 resources. We can see that here. And now we have this mind map here, and this actually looks pretty cool. So we have a very top-down structure like a mind map should be. And we have the title here, so Atomic Habits. Then we have the fundamentals. We have the first law, second law, and third law. Now, if you want to learn more about the fundamentals, you can just open it up and it will sort of give you more explanation or more subtopics about that part. So we have the power of Atomic Habits. We have the habits and identity part, how to build better habits. So you see how it's like expanding. You can always zoom in or zoom out. And it's expanding on these topics and it's sort of giving you all the information and breaking down all of the content. So that is pretty impressive, all based on these 3 documents. Now, if you just go to the other one, for example, the first law, you can see it does exactly the same thing. So you can go through the different points that have been discussed, the different points that have been touched upon in the book. And you see how fast you can get to like an entire mind map, an entire structure framework of that book. So if we look at the 3 layers of behavioral change, we see the outcomes, the processes, and the identity. Now you can always click on one of the parts and sort of get more information about that. So now it's looking at resources, it's digesting the information, and it's sort of getting more input based on what you've clicked on. So here we can see basically by clicking on it, it asks like discuss what these sources say about the outcomes, the results in the larger context of the 3 layers of behavioral change. And then it gives you an entire explanation about that part. You can always go deeper. You can ask it to sort of make a visual about it. You can go more deeper, give some real life examples. That is pretty neat. So the mind maps in general are a great way to visualize your learning and to sort of build structure in what you want to learn. Especially if you have multiple resources, you can just throw them in there and get an overview of the biggest, most important points and then move forward with that. Now let's have a look at the second output that we can generate, which is the flashcards. Now let's go back to the studio and let's try the flashcards to sort of see what that gives. If we want to add some flashcards about the content, about the book, about the speeches, about all of the things that we found. All right, so now the flashcards are available. So I'm going to click it and then let me just shift that to the other side here. So what we have is we have a blank side, which is the question side, and then if we click it, we get the flip side. So on the question side, we have, according to James Clear, what is the mathematical outcome of getting 1% better each day for 1 year? And this is no input from me except for the sources, so it's really coming up with it itself. Now if I click it, and that is the 37%, so that is you'll end up being 37 times better by the time you're done. Then you can go to next. What is the term for initial period of habit formation? Blah, blah, blah. You click it, you see a valley of disappointment. Another one we see here, what are the 3 layers of behavioral change? And that is exactly what we had in the mind map. So if I click it, you'll see like outcomes, processes, and identity. You can always ask it to explain the answer more. So if I do that, it will sort of go back to that chat and it will say, I'm reviewing flashcards based on the source material and I'd like to expand on my understanding of them. On the front, it reads, what are the 3 layers of behavioral change? And then the answer on the back reads outcomes, processes, and identity. Explain it in more detail. So now it's again running through the sources and it's sort of collecting all of that information. And then it's giving me more input, more references, and more data to process. And we can see even here, we get a really nice structure, but also with the sources. So we see some references to it. We see some more information on which you can always click and sort of get to that point in the source material. So it's really linking everything together, which is incredibly impressive. So you can read through that. This is from the PDF guide. You can always see what the source is, and then you can just close that source and sort of keep your overview here on the left. So also flashcards are an incredible way to learn and process all of that information. And what I like most is that we have that depth layer. So if we don't understand anything, we can just click through it and go to the source materials. We can go to the source files, which just makes it so easy or so friendly, user-friendly to learn something from. Especially if you're a student, you can just go to the flashcards, you can start learning. And if you don't understand anything, you click it, you ask more information. You can always go back to the sources to sort of get to that fundamental layer that you need. So besides the flashcards, there's also an option to create infographics, and that I'm pretty curious to see how it does. So here we can see that the infographic is already done. So I'm going to sort of click that and see what it comes up with. Now I'm very curious to see how it does, and this doesn't look too bad actually. Let's put that on full screen. And here we can see the infographic that it generated. So what it does is Atomic Habits, the 4 laws of behavioral change, simple practical guide based on James Clear's framework for building good habits and breaking the bad ones. We see the fundamentals of Atomic Habits at the top, the 3 main points where we have focus on system goals with a nice accompanying infographic. We see the true behavior change is identity change. And then we see the surprising power that 37% really visualized. I like the visuals that it came up with because we have that process, that system building in place to get to your goal. We also have that behavior change that you want to have identity change. So we go from a blank person, blank slate basically, to a person which has that color to it, which has that behavior change, that identity change, really following up on these actions, which is actually pretty cool. Then here at the bottom, we have a practical framework for change, the habit loop with the different steps. And then we also have the 4 laws of behavioral change mapped out, how to build a good one and how to break a bad one. Now here it sort of made a copy of that one, so I think it missed a little bit there, but then again, if that's the only mistake, that's pretty good. And also from a color point of view, I think it did a pretty good job to sort of create some color consistency. It might not be your style, but at least it's color consistent and you can sort of build upon that. Now, maybe one of the downsides of these infographics is that they're all baked into one layer. So they're sort of exported as a PDF, as a PNG, which makes it very hard to change things. You always have to sort of ask it to update this, and then it's generating a new model. You can't really take out one part yourself. That is a little bit at the moment still not so flexible. So what I suggest you do with these, it gives a pretty good overview about the topic, a really nice infographic, but you can use that as inspiration or as a base to sort of build your own or to create something more flexible and more dynamic. And I was just curious to see how it does. If you generate it again, will it take the same content? Will it take the same visuals or go for a different style? So also that, let's have a look at that one as well. So here we can see I just ran that infographic again. So if we click it now and put it on full screen, we can see that it has generated the same content or very similar content, but in a different layout. So you can go through some iterations to really get that. We see the same title, so Atomic Habits, 4 Laws, and then based on James Clear's framework, blah, blah, blah. We see the fundamentals. So focus on systems, not goals. So we have the systems to achieve our goal. True behavior change is identity change. I like that previous visual going from the blank person to that identity change, but also this is pretty good, pretty decent visual. And then we have the surprising power of tiny changes, so that graph. So we have that exact same 3-step process here, where we get 1% better 37 times better, or if you get 1% worse, you end up below 0. I don't know why it's taking that shift here a little bit. I think that diverts a bit from the other graphs, but then again, it's not bad either. And then on the right side, we have that practical framework for change. Here we see the habit loops defined in a little bit of a different way. So we have Q twice. I don't think this should be there. So that's why we always have to check if it's actually accurate. Here we see Q 2 times, craving, response, reward. And I think the previous one, that circle, is more closely related to the content, I would say. I don't know it in detail. But in general, I kind of like this one here on the right. So the 4 laws of behavioral change, building a good habit, breaking a bad one. So we see it, the 4 steps or the 4 laws of building a good one and making a bad one. And I think it's really cool if we start to compare them one by one. We can see that we don't fully have to trust the AI model yet. We still have to do our background checks to see if the content that it generates is actually correct and if there's no mistakes sort of sneaking in. So maybe generating it a few times, especially for these images, might definitely be a good case. So that brings us to the next one, which is going to be this slide generation. All right, so here we can see the slide deck that has been made. So let me just open that up and we can see the different slides. First one is an opening slide, Atomic Habits. Nothing special there. It took the image of the book, I think. Front visual. Here we can see the result of 1% better every day with a lot of text on it, but a graph on the right, which is good. And then it's sort of giving all of the different information in a pretty text heavy format. It's using the graphs, it's using the visuals that it's found in the book or the PDF, and it's sort of summarizing everything. So in general, I think for a content summary, this looks pretty good. Layout wise, I think it has a lot of work to do, but from a content point of view, I think this is not bad at all. We can see the examples from the book, we can see the cues, we can see the laws, we can see the steps. It's doing it in a very practical way, and I think we have around 15 slides in total. And I'm curious to see if I download this. It's doing it actually as a PDF, so it's no Google Documents, it's no PowerPoint, it's no Canva template, which means everything is sort of baked in. So you can't change if you want to reposition things, if you want to override things, you can't do that. It's sort of using different images as an output here for the slides, which isn't great unless you want to one-shot it, but you don't want to rerun it every single time, I think. But again, this could serve as a summary, this could serve as a starting point on which you make your own slides. I think if we look at the slides, it's far from perfect since it's sort of giving us a PDF and no editable format. But then again, the content has been nicely condensed and it's a good starting point for us. So it's definitely not a perfect end result, but it's a pretty decent starting point for us to make our own materials from or to learn from, definitely. So in the meantime, the video explainer video has been completed. It took around 5 to 10 minutes. So let's have a look at the result.
Well, today we are diving deep into James Clear's incredible book, Atomic Habits. They often have the exact same goals. Seriously, think about it. Every single athlete in the Olympics wants to win that.
And actually, I'm kind of surprised at how good of a job it does. Pretty spot on for that whiteboard sort of style, that whiteboard video. So this one actually did way better than I expected. It sort of took like a slideshow. It generated many different images for a 10-minute video, and then in a pretty accurate voiceover, which looks pretty good, I would say. I mean, the visual style, is it perfect? No, but is it better than what most people could do? Absolutely. So that is what's so impressive about this, is that it can generate a 10-minute video in less than 10 minutes, which is mind-blowing. I mean, no one could ever do it that fast. And it might not be 100% perfect, but then again, it could serve as a perfect inspiration. It's a perfect introduction to all of your content. So if we just look at some of the different slides, let's call it, that have been generated for this explainer video, it is quite impressive. And even the style consistency is going for that sort of hand-drawn effect a little bit. And it works really well for explainer videos. So that is why I'm so surprised with the result that it came up with. Now, besides video, there was also an audio podcast. And given that we've seen the video already, I'm pretty convinced that the audio will be quite good as well. So what we have here is a 15-minute audio summary of our books and our resources. Let's have a look at the first 10 seconds. Let's listen to that to sort of see the voice and see how it sort of introduces.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're on a mission to take this huge world of, monumental achievement and boil it all down.
Right down to the tiniest possible action you can take every day.
So what it did is it actually generated like a live podcast between two people, male and a female, discussing that book and how they interpret it, which is even way better than I expected. I mean, this could be a podcast. You might feel it's AI, but then again, it's not like it's this standard annoying AI voice. This is actually quite nice to listen to. And if it's something that could summarize a lot of work for me, I would probably give this a go and not be annoyed by it. So that is pretty impressive as well. So besides the audio and video, we also have something else, which is generating reports. Now, if we go to generate reports, we'll see there's multiple things we can do. So if we click on generate report, we can see there's multiple ones. So we can go for creating our own briefing document, study guide, blog post, keynote speech, case study, explanatory article, or a concept explainer. I mean, if we go for a keynote speech, I'm pretty curious to see how it does. And you can choose even the language, and then describe the report that you want to generate. So I'm going to keep the standard settings here. Inspiring professional keynote speech. Let's just run it. I'm very curious to see how it does. I'm pretty impressed with the model so far. Based on these 3 inputs that we gave it, okay, it was the entire book. But then again, that's pretty cool that you can do this, for example, as a student, to just run it. Now here we can see the keynote that is available. Now you see it's also based on the 3 resources, and it's starting entirely from a blank keynote speech, which is incredible. Like, good morning, that's the first thing it says. If we look at across the landscape of our professional lives, blah, 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 it's just written out an entire keynote speech for us. Now, it might not be perfect, although I think it's pretty damn cool. It might not be your style entirely, but it's a pretty good starting point. Now, if you look at this, it's pretty incredible how fast it works. You can generate a keynote speech in just minutes. Now, this doesn't mean you're going to nail the keynote speech, but it's a pretty good starting point. You don't have to start from a blank Word document or a blank piece of paper and start writing your thoughts. You can sort of use the AI model to structure it for you and then build it and customize it and make it your own. Because that's the only way how you're going to nail the delivery. But I would definitely not shy away from it. I would use it as a base model, use it as a learning tool, use it as something to improve yourself and to make your keynote speeches, make your slides, the slide decks, your quizzes, make it better than it is already. So I'm really impressed with how this does, especially if you think it's only based on 3 models. One is a book, okay, but if you do this as a student, that is pretty powerful to sort of learn and go through materials. And now let's have a look at the quiz. So here we have the quiz already, and according to James Clear's mathematical calculation, improving by 1%, that makes us 37 times better. That's right. The book describes the valley of disappointment, and that is the, let's say this one. That's right. And if we take a random one, then it says not quite right. So you can just go through the quiz here. You can even get hints, you can get more information, you can score it good content, bad content, sort of train the model, I think. And also here based on 3 sources. So again, this is pretty cool, pretty impressive what you can do with it. So I think for the quizzes, a lot of people might spend a lot of time preparing those things, writing them by hand, creating them in some sort of software. I think that's all over and we don't need to do that anymore. We can just use one of these sort of things to sort of get that information and to get that speed in, which is super incredible. So overall, looking at all of the things combined, I'm just blown away by what this model can do and how powerful it is for students or for anyone basically to sort of digest large amounts of content and really boil it down to the essence and really train yourself in a practical way. I'm really surprised with how you can get access to the source materials in a very fast way. So you go from, for example, the mind map, you click through to a part and you just ask it to reference the source material and it goes to that exact part, which is, for me, it's the best thing that is out there if you want to study something. So I would definitely advise you to sort of play around with it and experiment with it, because this tool is pretty incredible. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about this. Have you tried it? Are you going to use it? And how do you see things evolving from here? Thanks a lot for watching. Hope to see you in the next video. And if you want to learn more about AI, watch the video on the screen right now.